Over on the Patreon channel, I do training that covers things like cognitive dissonance and the endowment effect, confirmation bias, different mental states people that aren't free thinkers find themselves in when they simply rely on the media to form their opinion for them. So what we can do with that information is create different white hat psychological operations to allow people to come to realizations on their own, thinking it was their idea. Now, how that applies to today's video is this. I ran a mini one in the last 3 days. Very simple, basic one that I'm going to use today to show in training for the Patreon folks. We're going to combine the secret level clearance guys with the top secret level clearance guys to walk them through this, to show them how easy it is. That there's a giant group of people in this country that are in a mental state that makes them incredibly malleable. Now, it has to do with this election in Mexico. Prior to the election of this guy, there was, of course, the story that he's this hardcore leftist, that he is going to change things dramatically. Also, there are these fake stories going on all over the internet about him saying that he was going to flood our border with massive amounts of immigrants and overwhelm our system and all this kind of stuff. And of course, there's memes galore, here you can find about how terrible and terrible this guy was. And everybody bought it, hook, line, and sinker. And you can read what the guy says in here to PolitiFact, and you can go read it for yourself if you want to translate it into Spanish. Had nothing to do with that. Nothing to do at all. And that's been proven. But the stories were everywhere and all over YouTube. So that was the story. Then he gets elected. So then I make this video saying that he's actually going to be good for the border issue. And it's in a video about where we talk about dengue. We talk about dengue for a little bit, 7-1, confirmed dengue. And then we talk about the election because it was coming up the next day. And I got inundated, absolutely inundated with comments how I was totally wrong and how he was going to flood the border and blah, 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 showing clearly that these people were allowing the media to form their opinions for them. Because they were only reading about it on Facebook posts. 1 or 2 that got reproduced 1,000 times, making it seem like it was the real story. So then, and this is priceless, this is absolutely priceless, I do have to thank the leader, the dear leader, for this, because this is what he said after having talked to the guy. Now listen closely to Mr. Trump himself.
I just spoke with the president-elect of Mexico. We had a great conversation, about a half an hour long. We talked about border security. We talked about trade. We talked about NAFTA. We talked about a separate deal, just Mexico and the United States. We had a lot of good conversation. I think the relationship would be a very good one. We'll see what happens, but I really do believe it's going to be a very good one. He had a very excellent election, did, I would say, even better than anticipated. I told him a number of years ago when I saw him campaigning for a different race, frankly, a different year, a different race, I said someday he's going to be the president of Mexico. So he remembered that, and it turned out to be correct. We had a great talk, and I think he's going to try and help us with border. We have unbelievably bad border laws, immigration laws, the weakest in the world, laughed at by everybody in the world. And Mexico has very strong immigration laws, so they can help us.
So they can help us. This guy just described somebody that apparently he's known for years. Met the guy, apparently. And now thinks he's going to be a giant asset at the border. Just like I said in my video. I was totally wrong then, completely inundated, but now that he said it, I haven't heard or seen anybody come out and make any kind of a video or any kind of a assertion that, wow, well, Mr. Trump has said that he's going to be an asset, so maybe we should believe him. Because they're still stuck in cognitive dissonance. That the President of the United States has a long-standing relationship with, knows, and was complimentary of a guy that for months you called a hardcore leftist and a threat. I mean, you can't create this stuff for yourself. It's really an amazing thing to watch. People that believe they've elected a conservative, believe that they've elected some messiah, now are seeing things they cannot deal with. And I'm sure there's going to be some kind of lame-brained 5D chess excuse for this. And they're going to grab onto that, how, you know, Mexico is strong on borders, and so we should be more like Mexico. Is that what you're going to grab onto now? We should be more like Mexico? I mean, I can't imagine any true Trump supporter saying this, but it's exactly what your leader just said. So this is how you do it. You let people who have their mind made up, preconceived notions about something, let them run with it. Let them run with it. And then when something comes out, drop the hammer like this and see how they react to it. And I'm not making up what I let Mr. Trump speak in his own words. You tell me what you think. After having, for the last month or so, talked about this new leader of Mexico being this giant threat, what do you think now about what the president said? About how this guy's going to be an asset and how they're going to work together very well and how he's going to help us on the border. Did you hear the president say anything about this guy sending a giant flood or being a threat? You sure didn't, did you? So maybe you'll start to wake up and believe you're being manipulated. Because you can't make this stuff up. You just can't. A Mexican frontrunner plans massive flood. Calls for immigration to flood. Flood of immigrant families. It's ridiculous. And that's all I did. Search AMLO flood of immigrants. And this is what came up. So I will leave it there. But July 1st, I said basically this exact same thing. Pretty much exactly what the president just said. And I was called wrong, and I was called all sorts of names, but I'm used to that. So I'm sure the comment section on this is going to be very interesting, but we will leave it there for you and let you folks kind of chew on that and see what comes out. Like, share, subscribe.